Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Greg Kimball, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Wing Commander Christine Fay. Today marks the 75th anniversary of the Battle of the Bismarck Sea. We would like to welcome the visitors who are in attendance this evening and commemorating this historical event. We warmly welcome the family of Corporal Colin Edward Bowman, whose story will be told shortly. We're honoured to acknowledge Mr. John King, President, ACT Returned and Services League of Australia. We also acknowledge the members of the 45th Infantry Battalion Association. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcasts of this ceremony across Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the Australian War Memorial. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they love. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
we remember and pay tribute to Corporal Colin Edward Bowman. Born in Ballina, New South Wales, on the 2nd of October in 1913, Colin Bowman was the son of Samuel and Lillian Bowman. Before his enlistment into the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 3rd of July 1940, Colin Bowman had been employed in a butter factory. After enlisting, he was posted to the 2nd 20th Battalion, part of the 22nd Brigade of the Australian 8th Division. In February 1941, the 22nd Brigade embarked for overseas service aboard the famous ocean liner, the Queen Mary, which had been converted into a troop ship. When it arrived in Singapore, the 22nd Brigade joined the garrison forces in Malaya. With Japan's entry into the war in December 1941, the Malayan Peninsula was invaded by Japanese forces. From mid-January 1942, the units of the 8th Division were involved in fierce fighting against the Japanese. By the beginning of February, the British and Commonwealth forces had been pushed back to the island of Singapore, and on the night of the 8th to 9th of February, Japanese forces began landing on Singapore Island. The 22nd Brigade bore the brunt of the Japanese landing on the northwestern area of Singapore, and heavy casualties were inflicted on both sides. On the 15th of February 1942, after weeks of fierce fighting, Singapore fell. Corporal Bowman became one of 45 Australian British troops captured in that surrender. He spent the first period of his imprisonment at Sarah Lang Barracks in the large prisoner of war camp, Changi, Singapore. During 1942, Japan began transporting large work parties of prisoners of war from Singapore to various parts of its empire. In November, Bowman became part of Sea Force, which was sent to Japan. Arriving in Japan in the middle of the northern winter, Bowman was amongst a group of Australians sent to the prisoner of war camp, Naoetsu, also known as Prisoner of War Camp Tokyo 4B. Naoetsu was the worst camp encountered by the Australian prisoners of war in Japan. The guards were particularly cruel, beatings were common, and the prisoners slaved on work details, and rations were at starvation levels. Of the 300 Australians sent to the camp at Naoetsu, 60 died. Among them was Colin Bowman, suffering from croup pneumonia and beriberi. He died of illness on the 18th of January 1944. He was 30 years old. Bowman is buried in the British and Commonwealth War Cemetery of Yokohama, Japan. His epitaph on his gravestone, chosen by his family, reads, "How shall we show our love to thee when he giveth all?" His name is listed here on the honour roll on my left amongst 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is on display beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Corporal Colin Edward Bowman, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old,
as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they'll be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.